Hey guys, Louis here from thelanguagescientist.com, and in today's video I'm going to talk about the best apps to learn French. Now, I have included a link to all of the apps I'm going to talk about in the description of this video with discounts applied, but the three apps I'm going to talk about are number one, Rocket French, number two is going to be FrenchPod101.com, and number three is going to be Pimsler French. Those are, in my opinion, the best apps to learn French and really reach a conversational level in French in a fairly short amount of time. Now, who am I to sort of evaluate those apps? Well, my name is Louis once again. I'm a native French speaker, and I had to learn, English and other languages on my own, and I think I did a pretty good job on a lot of those languages in reaching a pretty high level. So I know what it takes to actually learn a language to a high level. So Rocket French, FrenchPod 101, and Pimsler French are some very, very good options, and I'm going to tell you why. So the first app I have chosen is Rocket French. And here, the main value of Rocket French is that this is an all-in-one, one-stop app if you want to learn French. It has everything you need to cover the first 6 months of learning French, and at the end of those 6 months, you're going to be able to have conversations with French speakers. Now, you're not going to be like native level, obviously, but you're going to be able to have conversations in French. What makes Rocket French really special is that, nowadays a lot of apps online, they actually focus, it's more like they don't focus on grammar, and they do all kinds of, drills and all kinds of activities with French, which I feel is great. I'm talking about like Duolingo and Babbel and that kind of stuff. But they sort of leave grammar on the side. In addition to this, there's not a real emphasis on like actual conversation, actually training you to have conversations. And Rocket French is actually great in that sense. So let me show you. In Rocket French, there are two types of lessons: audio lessons, so these are like conversation training lessons, and language and cultural lessons, which are like grammar lessons. So the first type of lesson here, audio lessons, which are, in my opinion, like conversation training lessons, are based around a conversation in French, and then you're going to be prompted to actually participate in the lesson and actually play the part of one of the characters in a conversation in French, and you can record yourself and grade your pronunciation and so on. So this is like the part where you're really learning to, speak in French, and this is really unique. The second part, the other 50% of the lessons in Rocket French is going to be actual grammar lessons. Now, these grammar lessons are much less sort of dense as like the textbook equivalent. Rocket French does a good job of dissecting things into digestible chunks. So this is definitely not like complex, French grammar. You get most of the information without the headaches. So that's pretty much it for Rocket French, a pretty solid tool overall. It's going to be probably around 6 months for you to complete the entire program. Alright, so now let me talk about FrenchPod101.com. FrenchPod101.com is an excellent website. I've actually used a bunch of those tools. There's JapanesePod101.com, there's KoreanClass101.com. And the main selling point to me here is that all of the lessons are based on conversations between French people, native French speakers. But in addition to that, you're going to have hosts, French-speaking people actually talking about some of the concepts in that conversation, like grammar information, vocabulary, cultural information, and they're going to talk about that all in French. So every single lesson, and there are hundreds of lessons, is going to be about 20 minutes of two French people actually speaking in French, and you're just getting like pure French listening for 20 minutes, and you have hundreds of those lessons. There's no other website, no other tool on the internet that is going to enable you to actually listen to, hundreds of hours of actual French people speaking at the right level for you. So there's a lot of conversation, but this is not to say that, grammar and vocabulary are left on the side. All of this information is presented in those lessons. Now, if you're worried that, going 100% and listening to 100% French from the get-go is little bit too much for you, don't worry. There's actually a host every time. There's like a third person, an English speaker who is bilingual. That person is going to explain some of the concepts to you. But as you get higher and higher in those levels, like at the upper intermediate level, pretty much all of the lessons, like 95%, is going to be just in French. And so you're getting lots of listening in French. It's like you're actually doing immersion in France. All right, so now let me talk about the third app, which is Pimsler French. I think a lot of people are hating on Pimsler in general, not just for French, because they don't necessarily understand the value and they haven't actually completed a Pimsler program. So Pimsler is that's what Pimsler is. This is the audio player here. Every single day for 5 months, you're going to have to do a 30-minute lesson. Now, the lesson you can download it for offline listening, which is very practical. You never have to actually sit down and study with Pimsler. You can just do it during your commute. You don't have to invest any time sitting down and studying boring stuff. I have dozens of people, a lot of people actually coming to my channel and leaving comments saying, hey, I finished the Pimsler French program, or Pimsler Spanish, or Pimsler Japanese, and now I can have conversations with actual native people, like good conversations. Maybe not like talking about politics is a little bit too much, but having real conversations is possible. Pimsler is really centered around the research that was done by Dr. Paul Pimsler, who is now, I think, dead. And it's all about spaced repetition and recall. So what I'm trying to say here is that the Pimsler French lessons are going to be a conversation between two French speakers, and then you're going to be prompted to actually participate and recall and participate in that conversation. At the end of the 30-minute lesson, you're going to be able to actually reproduce the conversation on your own. And those lessons are highly memorable because the information is repeated at strategic points in time so that you remember things in the long term. Just yesterday, I had a comment, this was for Pimsler Japanese, of a guy. He said, well, I did, maybe 50 or 60% of Pimsler Japanese, but years after, I can still remember the information that was in there. And this is very much in contrast with a lot of the information that's presented in school. For example, when you take like French classes or any kind of language classes in school, I can't remember any of my like Spanish classes I attended in high school. And that's because they don't use scientific principles for good memorization. And Pimsler does the opposite. It's all about that science of really remembering things efficiently. Alright, so that's pretty much it for this video on the best apps to learn French. I have included a link to all of the apps I've talked about with discounts applied. So click the links in the description and I'll see you in the next video.